Alright, I'm Dr. Barry Julius, and today what we're going to be talking about is blogs and social media, as well as the intersection between the two. And also, the third part, just briefly, we're going to touch upon is appropriate use and some of the dangers of using both of these, blogging as well as social media. So, let's start by talking about what a blog is. So the definition of a blog is basically just a regularly updated website, usually with content. It's run by an individual, a small group, and most blogs are written in an informal or conversational style. Why is it so important that we consider blogs as a way to train our residents? Well, first of all, most residents use social media as well as they use blogging for learning about things, to gather information. So it's a way of rapidly communicating and transferring unfiltered information. Most blogs also have a way of interacting with the creator of the blog as well, and this allows for two-way communication and as well as feedback. So you're not only getting the initial information, but you're able to find out, okay, what does this actually mean from the person that's creating it. There's one study that looked at testing before and after blogging, and they found that these people that actually read these articles on blogs, they had much improved post-test mastery of the material. So in terms of education, there's been some backup to show that there is some advantage to blogging. And from my experience, I find that it's part of the younger generation. I'm kind of in the bridge generation, but the people in the younger generation, they tend to like information in short bursts. I guess used to be called the MTV generation. These folks have they're just used to seeing very, very small amounts of information, looking at it, and then learning from that as well. As well as these residents have smart devices that are readily available. So these are cause readily accessibility to the material as well as increased retention of the material because of the shortness of the burst there. And then finally, I just found this piece of information to be quite interesting. They said that 4 out of 10 millennials tend to interact more so with their smartphone than with their significant other, wives and girlfriends, and other significant others. I find that to be pretty funny and interesting, kind of telling information about why this is so important to use blogging and social media to get the attention of residents as well. So what are some of the things that you can do with a blog? And so as an associate program director, I have my own blog, which I use to show cases as well as to give information via articles. But any person can set up a blog, whether it's through the hospital or on one's own. You can also share information and get feedback from others, which I mentioned briefly before. And I love the comments. The comments I find to be very instructional, and they really teach everybody. A good comment goes a long way in actually reinforcing the material as well. So these are some of the things that one can do with a blog, and this can all help to teach residents as well. So what is it that residents expect from a blog? There was an article in Forbes. Basically what they were saying, they called it a frictionless experience. What that meant, very easy to use and intuitive. They also want new articles and things coming out from time to time. And they also like the speed of it. So if you have a website that's very slow, it's very ineffective. No one's going to want to go on there. So those are some of the things that you should think about if you decide to create a blog for educational purposes. How do you start a blog? This used to be something very complicated and used to be something that only it's very esoteric for a chosen few that knew coding. But it turns out that nowadays there's so many opportunities and ways to create a blog. My own blog, razresident.com, uses a format called WordPress, which happens to be one of the more flexible ones. It's a little more complicated, but there are lots of other different ones. I've mentioned some over here. You can look on the slide. But there's lots of ways to go about doing it. Some for the more computer savvy, some more technical. But there's really lots of ways to go about creating one, and so it's not very hard anymore to do that. So how to start a blog again? Bottom line, there's lots of different ways to format it, lots of ways to edit it. And sometimes if you go through the hospital, you can actually you don't have to purchase your own domain name. You can actually have a free use of the hospital resources as well. But again, lots of different ways and to go about doing it that you don't have to be technically savvy for as well. All right, so now we're going to briefly talk about social media and what it is and how that's so important and how that intersects with blogging. So to begin with, social media is basically it's the definition. It's websites and applications that enable users to share content as well as to participate socially with one another, with social networking. So what is the importance and how does that affect blogging? So I like to say, well, first of all, almost every single person that's coming into residency program that's young, they use social media in one form or another. So we're really missing out on an opportunity to teach residents if we don't use this information. And it's also it's a very important way to communicate as well. So like I like to say, if you don't have a way of communicating what you're writing, then there's no point to writing whatever the content that you're creating. So that's the importance of the social media and how that intersects. And there's all sorts of social media platforms. I'm sure most of you know or have heard of these different platforms, and the more well-known ones are Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. All the different social media platforms have different types of audiences and different advantages for communication. The ones that are more geared to professional interactions are Twitter. Actually, Twitter is very heavily used in the interventional radiology world. There's constantly messages going back and forth, and different people want to share different types of articles, and they share different types of techniques. It's very, very common. Twitter is a great way to spread some sort of article information, particularly a blog if you have one. LinkedIn is good for professional marketing, but you'll see all sorts of articles that are geared to the professionals. So that's another appropriate one. Instagram, I use Instagram. It's great for sharing pictures. It's also great for showing cases. So if you go on my site of Instagram, you'll see all sorts of different radiology cases as well, and that's typically shared by and looked at by many individuals. And then there's the big behemoth, Facebook. Facebook tends to be the largest. I actually don't like Facebook as much for professional applications, but there is a large following, so you can get a lot of people onto there and reading your information. It tends to be more personal and friend oriented than the professional. But again, it can be used as a way to disseminate information. One thing that you really need to think about as well is also the appropriate use. Most hospitals have some sort of policy about the appropriate use of blogging and social media. It's very easy to create something that can be harmful to others and to yourself. There's all sorts of privacy rules, the HIPAA violations. You really need to make sure that you're not sending out information that should be private to other folks. As well as you want to make sure that you're maintaining professionalism at all time. Sending an inappropriate email, sending out inappropriate shares as well. That can affect you as an individual as well as the hospital. It can be dangerous as well. You could actually affect patient care. So you really have to be very careful if you're going to create a blog or if you're going to share social media in general. And the thing that you really need to remember is that all content is permanent. There's no such thing as erasing it. Once it's on the web, it's fair game and it can be taken by anybody. And it also can be taken in or out of context. So you really have to be very careful with this. That being said, if it's used appropriately and you're using it to teach residents, it's a great tool for getting the information out to not only your own residents, but other residents in other programs as well. So I'd like to say the following. We're just going to go basically through a summary about the intersection of blogging and social media. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, how do you know that it really fell and made a sound? So this is the type of thing that I like to say. This is what social media is to blogging. It's really a way to get that information out. Residents will know about the blog only if you share the information and also repost it and show other people that it exists as well. So that's really important. So what are the take-home messages from this little talk here? We're really remiss if we dismiss these tools as too hard or ineffective, because smartphones are commonplace for almost every single person, residents as well as attendings as well. So it's a great tool for learning, especially for the new generation, for millennials. It's used very, very widely. We will miss out on a big opportunity if we don't better teach our students, and we need to latch on to this. And also very importantly, if you're going to decide to do some sort of blogging or use social media, be very careful. Make sure that you're not using the information inappropriately for the internet, and you don't want to get yourself in trouble or the hospital. Well, that was it then. I appreciate it.